I apologize, it's been a couple weeks. Honestly speaking, I think this will probably become the new norm, where I think instead of talking about every single episode every single week, I'd rather like compile 2 or 3 or 4, especially when there's not as much going on in some episodes or not as many talking points in some episodes, and just kind of get it all out in one video. Good morning, welcome. That is good morning in Luxembourgish, the language in which the language of the country in which I live. Yes. So you guys seem to like my discussion of the overdress anime, and well, I guess I'll keep doing it for the time being at least. But of course, as I said earlier, this is probably going to become not as frequent as, you know, every single week, so therefore you guys can look out for that as well. But today we're going to talk about both episodes 3 and 4, and so we are now a third of the way through the first core, the first season. I'm not sure how it's being titled, and yeah, episode 3 was really cool. I personally liked it. I've watched it a couple times now, although there are some nitpicky points and things I could pick at and kind of talk about. It overall was a good episode. Episode 4 though, I don't know. To me, that was the first one where it felt like we're doing things like for not much reason, or I also like the hype from the third episode kind of fell flat for me as well. So let's talk about it. Basically, in episode 3, we had a hyped up challenger using Barrow Magnus that, you know, seemed to be like a big deal, maybe like the first villain, and then kind of got slapped up in the only episode that he existed in, which was kind of unfortunate. There was also this sort of, you know, the whole training arc, I guess, and like weed pulling, and it's kind of almost feel like a reference to, you know, old Vanguard with like the draw training and whatnot, you know, but it was interesting. The one thing I got out of that is that it seems like Yu pays attention to detail or something of that sort, and maybe that's why he picked Trickstar as well. And they really emphasize this whole thing of like Danji sees something in Yu, right? It's like Danji is not just like motivated now to be a fighter of his own for his own sake, but he's like, he sees something in Yu, and that like motivates him to push Yu to become better. And like, you know, at the end of the episode, he says even a small dude like this can go, you know, like, you know, it's like face to face against me in a card game, right? That's the magnificent thing about Vanguard, and I do agree with that. That is definitely a good statement, and it definitely holds true, right? People from all kinds of backgrounds, of all kinds of people, right? You know, build, physique, or like, you know, it doesn't really matter at all. As long as you like a card game, you can play against each other no matter who you are. So I feel like that's like the big emphasis point of this episode, was like that Danji sees something in Yu, and that's why we have that weird sort of ending to the episode that I'll talk about later. The other thing was that like I liked some certain details, you know, like the fact that we saw them actually go into the card shop, and it was presented very much like C-Labo, so that felt like I was actually watching it with my little brother, and he was like, do card shops actually look like that in Japan? I was like, yeah, this literally looks like it's modeled after C-Labo. So I was actually pretty surprised how like accurately modeled it was. So that's kind of it for those like kind of like external details, I suppose. Like there's a lot of random things they talked about and kind of showed off, but to me, I think the big emphasis in episode 3 was also the fight, or 2 fights, right? So the first fight was, you know, Yu versus the challenger dude using Barrow Magnus. I already forgot his name. That fight was decent in general. Like the pacing felt okay, and like of course they're not explaining effects and stuff, but they, you know, Tomari kind of, you know, explained the fight well enough. But that was kind of weird when he goes for the Barrow Magnus with a 15 soul play, calls out double deep sonicer, and then just doesn't attack with one of them, and then Yu waits the turn after. So I was like, that definitely reaches, right? Because he didn't hit a defensive or anything, and the deep sonicer should be 28, so it's like, huh? Why did it like end turn? And you could clearly see on the animation that it was still standing, and he said like, you know, you blocked all my attacks, and it's like, but you still have another attack, like what's going on? So I don't know, that part was a little bit weird. I think that maybe me just being nitpicky as a Vanguard player, and of course, you know, a lot of the people watching the anime don't really care, and I respect that, you know, it's totally fine. But for people like me, you know, you're listening to my input here, of course I will pick up on those things. The Danji fight was actually really well done though. That's the one fight that I think was really well presented, because you saw that Yu already learned that Danji's deck needs to wait until turn 4 to like pop off, so he like rushed on turn 1. Like he called like 4 cards on turn 1 just to push like 3 damage, push him to 5 super early. And you know, the fact that they show that, I kind of wish Tomari like highlighted that a little bit more. She kind of like said like, oh, he's abusing, because like you need to make that really obvious, like even for those of us that play the card game, right? Because not everyone knows that that's how you actually abuse Bruce, right? And how you like make an advantage out of the situation. And Yu did that excellently, and I kind of wish it was highlighted a bit more, because that was just like straight up counterplay shown in a card game. And I'm sure that, I think Menjo actually is the person that's like scripting the fights, and he's doing an amazing job at scripting the fights, but whoever is writing the lines for the commentary, I feel like is missing out on like a couple things that need to be picked up like that. I also like that, you know, in the previous episodes we had, I think it was Zaksa that said like everyone has two sides to themselves, and this episode really brought out again like Danji's second face, right? His other side, where like he's like kind of like a big bro, like really energetic, passionate dude, but in a fight he's hard, right? He just like is tough, angry, pissed, like he's just, you know, going in all the time, and it's cool to see that second side of him as well, and that might be like one of the main motifs of the series too, because it feels like, you know, we haven't seen the other faces of a lot of these characters yet, which is something that I look forward to seeing, especially some of the characters that aren't presented as much so far. It was a bit odd though during the fight that overtriggers weren't really explained. Like they happened, you know, Dark State's overtrigger happened, but like Tomari didn't say what an overtrigger does, which I guess is okay, right? They kind of skip over some of those things, but at the same time then they explained persona writing, so I was like, why? And you know, like the animations when the overtriggers are pulled were really tight, and overall it was just really cool to see, and overall the fight was like nice. And honestly, I'm glad Yu did not win, because I think it would have been a bit weird. Like, you are a beginner, sure, you know how to play against this deck, but in the end it would be weird if somebody with like a 20 win streak suddenly crumbled to a new player. Sure, that's what happened to Kai, I think, in the original series, but I don't know, it's just kind of strange to me if that did happen. So I'm really glad Yu did not win, and we still got a really good fight out of it. And of course the actual fight animation, I've been waiting for this, but I also have a complaint with this, right? Because I'm glad that we now got to see Verena and Nirvana in action. It was really cool to see, but I want to see more units as well, right? We've seen Bastion, Bruce, and, you know, Verena and Nirvana now at this point, right? So the first we started X, and we haven't seen Magnolia animated, we haven't seen Seraph Snow animated, haven't seen Zorga or Orphist. Like, I don't know about y'all, but even like this sounds super like, you know, cringy and stuff, but it's especially like as a kid, I enjoyed like in high school and stuff to, you know, be playing and kind of like imagine what the battlefield looks like. You know, I was like 15, 16 back then, but it was because the anime presented all the cards and what they looked like in the animation that I could do that. Like close my eyes and be like, oh, so that's what like Dayusha looks like and things like that, right? And not having stuff like Orphist and Magnolia and stuff like animated, I think for the kids of this generation that are like getting into Vanguard now, I think for them, they might, you know, it's such a small thing, but it's also a pretty like, I don't know, like that emphasis on imagination that Vanguard has always had feels kind of removed here. And so I hope that they show more of the units being animated in the future, and, you know, let other characters have the spotlight and not just Danji and Yu and Megumi all the time. And it's funny because Megumi's had like the super spotlight and somehow Magnolia never showed up. And then the ending was a cool cliffhanger, right? It was a cool cliffhanger. I was like, ooh, Danji quits, that's epic. And then episode 4 comes and turns out it wasn't really much. He went fishing and like he just wants to like be a trainer basically. And I was like, I get that, but you could have done something cool with that. Like, I don't know, they could have done something cool with it and they just kind of dropped it, right? Episode 4 to me was as cool as it was to get some insights into the characters, and once again I say characters, but it was literally just Megumi. You know, we got to see a bit of her family life with her brother, and we got to see some of the like no faces, like some of the no-name characters from the actual like night amusement park sort of like play a role in like being a mob, but also being kind of like friendly at the end as well. But honestly, to me, this episode, I have a couple problems with episode 4. One, the whole cliffhanger of Danji feels like it didn't really do much, and two, Megumi's whole character is literally, I didn't like understand the whole thing, oops, misunderstanding, and it's just like, come on, man. I guess we sort of have seen like her, I don't know, it feels like they're trying to highlight her development like in terms of how she talks to her brother, but at the same time, I don't know, man, like we're not finding out too much more about Megumi. We kind of already know her two faces, which is like, you know, her at the amusement park and her when she's like in school, right? She's like a super rich girl and everything when she's, you know, out in public, but then as soon as she goes to the amusement park, she's like this tomboy, you know, Noelle Vermillion lookalike. So it's like, yeah, we kind of have her faces, we have Danji's two faces, we have, I guess, like Yu's like two-sidedness as well. And Yu in general was like, I feel bad for the kid because it feels like there's so much pressure put on him by Danji himself, and I kind of want them to focus on the fact more. They kind of did put some emphasis on that, right? That Danji, you know, is like maybe putting too much emphasis on Yu, and that's why he's like, Yu was disliked by the crowd too, right? They were like, you're the one that drove away Danji because like ever since you showed up, blah blah blah, right? And I think if anything, Danji feels like he's not showing enough responsibility for that. Like he kind of shows up in his tank, and like I like that animation, and like Zaksa in the tank and everything was pretty funny, but it feels like Danji's not really taking responsibility for the fact that he's putting so much stress onto this kid, right? right, onto Yu, who's just like, what, a middle schooler or something? And you know, as an adult, that's something that you definitely should be doing. So I don't know, that's kind of the reasons why episode 4 to me felt a little bit off. I liked the things I saw, and you know, I got like plenty of nice scenes, and like I like the characters and everything, but it's also just like, where's Toya? We're 4 episodes in, Toya doesn't exist basically. Masanori is directly tied to him, so I guess he doesn't exist either. Like Tomari is like the mom. I guess Tomari's 2 faces they've shown too, right? She's like the mom, and then she's the commentator, right? So she's basically like that, but I feel like there must be something else behind her character. Like surely they're gonna show something else. It can't be like, that can't be all that she's about, right? It feels a little bit, I don't know, everyone has some kind of like backstory to themselves, and I feel like the opening being so like gloom and gloom in terms of its animation and like how kind of like serious the song sounds, you know, I kind of expected everyone to have some kind of like tragic backstory, or like at least some kind of backstory that like develops over like why they are the way they are, or like why does Tomari get so passionate. Like when I saw that episode 5 was titled as something about pro wrestling, I was like, oh, maybe that's like Tomari's past, right? She used to be like a wrestling commentator and then like quit for some reason, but no, it's like an actual like Japanese pro wrestler is going to be in a cameo in an episode, and it's going to be about Danji again, and it's Danji this, Danji that. I love Danji, he's a great character, but can we please emphasize other characters? Like, can we please look at other characters a bit more? So that's kind of my issue right now with the anime, is that with this episode I really start to feel how some characters just feel kind of tossed to the side, and maybe that's just this arc, right? Maybe it's just like, you know, until Danji takes responsibility, kind of like they're building that up and like trying to stress out Yu as much as possible, but I feel like they were supposed to achieve that by episode 4 now, and that's what episode 4 felt like it was supposed to achieve. And so I don't know, episode 5 just feels like filler to me from the preview that we've seen, and hopefully it's not, but I don't know, man. I really hope we get some kind of insight on like other characters. I think that's my main thing right now, is like, who even is Toya, right? What is Team Blackout? Why do they exist as a faction? Like, I want to know those kind of things. Why do they gather at that night amusement park? Why don't they go to locals? There's clearly card shops in the area. Why is there such strong rivalry? They literally said that the dude that showed up in episode 3 is like some crazy big name in, you know, another region, and he has to travel in incognito and like hide his identity in order to fight people. So it's like, why is that a thing? I want to know those questions. I want to know those answers. I want that to be explored. I don't really care about some wrestlers showing up and Danji like getting punched in the face, right? I understand that Yu has a lot of pressure on him and Danji wants to raise him up to be a star and everything, but also like, why does he want him to be a star? Like, what's the point of that? What are they aiming for in this, right? In the original Vanguard series, there was always a clear goal. There was always just like, oh, national championships, like world championships, Asia championships. And it's like, for a card game player, that's a pretty natural goal to aim for, right? You know, in G as well, there was always like some kind of like overarching kind of tournament, and here it just feels like we don't really know what's the goal, right? Sure, Danji has 21 win streak, but what does it mean, right? What is the point of that? Because if they're just playing in like a locals, of course somebody can have a 21 win streak if they're way better than everyone else, but it's so emphasized that I want to know more about it. So I think this episode kind of like, maybe I'm just expecting different things from the season, and or maybe these things will be explored in the future and they're just kind of like world building for now, but I want more of it, right? It hasn't been world building enough for me, and I don't know, I guess I'm just kind of asking for a bit more, and for the time being feel like some things are a little bit lacking. But anyway, that's all I really had to say about episodes 3 and 4. I think the anime is still quite fun, although I wish there was a bit more going on, and I feel like episode 4 was trying to do something and it kind of like dropped without doing it, and episode 5's preview has me really going like, oh my god. So that's why I said these won't be every week. I really think that I won't have much to say about episode 5 at this point, looking at the preview, so I probably will come back in a good 2-3 weeks or so, maybe once, you know, later on in this month. But yeah, so let me know your thoughts as well on episodes 3 and 4. How do you like the anime so far? Do you like the direction it's been going in? I know some people really liked episode 4 as well, you know, because it was fun. They showed a lot of, you know, the characters that everyone loves, and you know, that kind of like clash between Megumi and Yu also felt pretty important, although that to me didn't feel like the emphasis of the episode. It was more so, I think the emphasis of episode 4 was that like Danji is the glue that holds everyone together, and he can't just like go up and leave like that. But I think that was already clear for a while now, somewhat, but I guess they really drove that point home in episode 4. So yeah, that is my thoughts on episodes 3 and 4. Danji is important, I get that, but please focus on other characters, and you know, it would be pretty great, even if it means that they have to bounce off of Danji, right? Because that's another thing, we don't know Megumi and Danji's relationship. Like, why does she consider him such a close friend? Or like, why is he the glue that holds everyone together, because so far, you know, we see that he gets people hyped up, but so far we only know that he's important to Yu and that's it. So hopefully they explore that more. If they do want to focus on Danji every single episode, at least let him bounce off of other people as well. Anyway, that's gonna be it for me today. Hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.